And just hang on there.
The one thing that Michigan wanted to do, and the kids said at the beginning, is that we wanted to sing the victors in Pasadena.
All right, welcome in here on this Tuesday, the 12th. It's Amazing Blue Review. Dennis Fithian with a special appearance by Jim Scarcelli, who normally joins us on a Thursday, but he is here on a Tuesday with good reason. Scar, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm great. We're going to talk about a Michigan legend. We're sad to see Coach Moe go, but we're going to talk about just how great a man and father and coach and guy was, just as good as they come, man.
If you're someone that's joining us for the first time, we're here weekdays at 1 o'clock. We're part of Rivals.com. We kick it off live. You can join us with the feedback. We put that message up on the screen. We talk about the latest in what's going on in Michigan sports. And Scar is correct. It was just not even 24 hours ago we found out about the news about former Michigan coach Gary Moeller passing away, and we are going to talk about that right out of the gate. Coming up in a few minutes, like I mentioned, Jim normally joins us on a Thursday. On Friday, there was a big development in recruiting with Dante Moore announcing that he's going to go to Oregon. So we'll get Scar's thoughts on that commitment coming up after we talk about Gary Moeller. Well, Scar, you played from 81 through 85. Gary Moeller was with Michigan, and heck, he was with him for 23 years. At one part, defensive core. Take me back and how that you remember the first time that you met Gary Moeller.
Well, I go way back, because Gary Moeller recruited my brother in 1978 to go to Illinois. So I knew Gary Moeller, met him when I was, a 14, 15-year-old kid in high school when he was recruiting my brother to go to Illinois. My brother ended up going to Illinois, where Lloyd Carr was on the staff, and Norm Parker, the great Michigan State defensive coordinator. Those were guys that were on that staff. And so I go way back with them. My parents loved him when he was recruiting my brother. But it didn't last there, but I go way back with them. I'm going to repeat a few things that people already know, but he was a great player at Ohio State. He was a captain, and because we used to hear Coach Moe talk a lot about his Ohio State, playing for Woody. He didn't dwell on it, but he mentioned it, and he used to tell stories about playing for Woody. He coached with Bo at Miami, but Bo was on the staff at Ohio State when Moe was a player, so that's how they knew each other. And then he brought him on to Miami, Ohio when he got the job, when Bo got the job there. But, then then when Bo came to Michigan, he brought Moe over as a position coach under Jim Young, who ran the defense. And then eventually, when Jim Young took the Purdue job, Coach Moe got the job at Michigan as the defensive coordinator. And he had many great years, one of the best defenses around. And then he ended up getting the Illinois job in 1977. He got that opportunity to be a head coach. That was his first opportunity as a head coach, and that's when he was recruiting my brother, and my brother ended up playing for him. And they only gave him 3 years, though. He didn't have a lot of as much success as he probably needed. Maybe he should have been given a little more time. But they ended up firing him, and then he comes back to Michigan. So my freshman year at Michigan, Coach Moe is working with the offense. And so as I'm getting recruited now again, Coach Moe was part of, recruiting me again. Now recruiting my parents, and my parents loved him. They had a great relationship with him and his wife. Denny, I don't know if people know this, but when you go on a recruiting trip, many times your parents will come. Sometimes some of the trips my parents didn't come on. Everybody's different. Some of the trips the parents go. So the parents will go and do things with the coaches. They might have a few adult beverages, but my dad loved Coach Moe, and I remember him talking about him. They had a great relationship as I was getting recruited. So, anyway, he's the offensive. He's worked with the offense. Then I got 4 years with Coach Moe and is the defensive coordinator. So I sat in that room for 4 years listening to Coach Moe. Teach defense and run that defensive staff and run that defense. And there was just so much I learned from him. But Coach Moe was brilliant. If I talk about Coach Moe, the first thing I got to start with is he's an intelligent man. He was very, very intelligent, very sharp. He was a great motivator. He knew how to motivate his coaching staff, his players. I saw him as a defensive coordinator. There's other guys that played with him, saw him as a head coach, but he was a smart guy. He was understood football, great motivator, competitive guy, and he had a sense of humor. He was a funny guy. Football is so tough. The grind of going down to football practice every day. Sometimes it's nice to have your leader have a sense of humor, and Coach Moe found a way to have a sense of humor. He made the drudgery of football, make you endure it a little bit, but just a brilliant man. And Danny, go ahead. I want to let you comment on just some of the things I mentioned before I just keep going a little too long here.
Well, the stuff so far is exactly what I'm looking for. I was interested to know, and you kind of talked about it, whether you considered Moeller more of an offensive mind, a defensive mind, or a head coach, because I was just talking with somebody who was telling me about Steve Smith, who ran this ball. Remember when he ran that 50-yarder right down the middle of the field? And Moeller had said, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is exactly how it's going to go. And that's exactly how it went. And then on the defensive side, I hear that in that bowl game against Auburn, when the Tigers had 3 NFL backs, including Bo Jackson back there, and he kept him out of the end zone, what a great defensive coordinator he was. So, it's not often that you see a head coach or anything. Normally you're coming over and you say, well, this guy's, learned on the offensive side of the ball, or, over on the other side. But here's a guy that, he was both, started on the offensive side, then he was over on the defensive side. But maybe it makes a little sense, because when you look at his playing days, it said linebacker, but then also maybe he played on the offensive side for a minute as well. So, and one thing I didn't know today is, I was reading that Moeller had said, he was surprised that Schembechler had brought him back to Michigan when he left to Illinois, because when he saw Bo, he said, I thought you had a rule that once somebody leaves, you don't bring him back. And he said, well, you're different. And he brought him back. So.
Yeah, Coach Moe understood football, man. I think one of the reasons he was such a good offensive coach when he did lead our offense, and then when he did become a head coach, was the guy understood defense. Great offensive coaches really understand defense. They know that defensive coaches aren't stupid, and Coach Moe understood defense. I think that's why he was such a great offensive coach. So much of my philosophy was just around things I learned from Moe. But I'm going to give you a couple.
Wasn't he going? He was got Michigan into the no huddle. I mean, we're talking about 90s, right?
Yeah. He started opening it up, and getting away from the option. I don't know how that's the theory that Moe was the guy that was getting Coach Schembechler away from, the option stuff and, being so run dominated, looking for the Elvis Gerbacks and, letting Jim Harbaugh throw the ball. I wasn't in them meetings, but that's kind of the theory. I'm going to give you a couple Coach Moeller lines that have stuck with me. Here's one, when guys were complaining about playing this, that, or whatever, I should be playing more. Coach Moe used to say this: what you do says so much. What you do says so much. I'd never forget that line. I must have used it 1,000 times as a teacher and coach. Coach Moe, I love you for that line. I used it many, many times. What else do I have on Coach Moe? Coach Moe was, from a football standpoint, we would walk in on Monday, and that chalkboard would be full of maybe 12-inch square boxes of formations. Visualize a whole high school classroom, the size of a chalkboard, dry erase boards back in those days, but formations, filled with formations. And then every formation had a defense and an adjustment. And Coach Moe was, if there's anything I learned from him is the importance of adjustments and being in the right spot. Because we did not do, our stuff was not just simple defense. There was a lot to it mentally. And Coach Mo spent a lot of time on making sure that the players understood the adjustments and that we were in the right spots. Because you can have the best players in the world if they're in the wrong gap, or they're dropping when they're supposed to be rushing, or covering a deep third when they're supposed to be in a flat. But Coach Mo was he had his teams ready from that standpoint. He talked about creating a flat wall. I never forget him talking about that. Defense has to have a flat wall. We can't have lateral seams. And so many times as a coach, you watch a game and you'll see the things that Coach Mo talked about. I played with his son, Andy, who was a great player, a smart player, a good player, ended up being a captain, and ended up being a great, long-time coach, great coach. The family was great people. I'm sad for Andy, and he knows how much guys think of his dad. And But he used to talk about Woody all the time, Denny. And one of the things he talked about with Woody was, when somebody gives you a compliment, punch him right in the face. As a football player, he said the worst thing people can do is start giving you compliments, because that makes you soft. And Coach Mo said, yeah, Woody used to say that to us. So he used to say that to us, the same thing. And I used to say the same things to my players. When people tell you how great you are, they make you soft. All that. So if they tell you how good you are, punch them right in the face. Those are words of Coach Mo. And I'm going to give you another story, Danny. We lost to Ohio State 1984. And after the game, me and a couple buddies did something real stupid. Got in trouble, something dumb. I don't want to tell the story, but it was dumb and it was immature. And I got called in, and Coach Schembechler ripped me. And then I got called into Coach Mo's office, and I never forget what he said. He looked at me and he said, if I allow you to get away with this, we're cheating you. If I don't punish you and punish you hard, I'm cheating you. And they did. They punished me and the guys that were involved with doing this stupid, immature stunt. But those are the things you remember, is the guy disciplined me. He said, hey, listen, I'm doing this for you, but I got to come after you, and we're going to come after you hard. We're going to punish you. And they did. They punished me. And but I never forget that statement. And so many people in education and leadership, the soft way isn't the right way, because you're cheating people. And that's what he said. If I allow you to get away with this, I'm cheating you. And I never forgot that. Danny, go ahead. Give your thoughts on what I threw at you there.
Well, I'm going to read some of the thoughts. Yeah, you've got Jim Harbaugh, who put out a statement yesterday saying that the football world lost a great man in Gary Moeller. Lloyd Carr called Moeller a great family man, great friend, great coach, and a man of integrity and high character. I admired him, respected him, and loved him. You just mentioned, and there's Desmond. I'm going to get to Desmond in a moment. Thomas Gwines, you mentioned some of those things that you remember Moeller saying. I've heard Thomas Gwines say this about Moeller. You better bloody your nose. That sounds like a coach telling you to get into the mix and get into the fray and get ready. Here's the captain of the 96 team, Rod Payne, saying next to his high school coach, Coach Moeller was the toughest, most loving, do the right coach he ever knew. And also the guy that said Payne belongs in Ann Arbor. Well, Payne was pretty sad putting that on Facebook. Desmond, who won the Heisman Trophy, said his heart's broken over the loss of Coach Mo. He's sending his love to his family and the entire Michigan community tonight. And you've probably watched this, I would imagine, Scar, a few times, and I would think that most people are familiar with it. And it's this particular video of the 4th and 1, one of the most famous plays in Michigan football history, but I don't know if have you heard the audio ever that accompanies with it? Let's just play it through, and I'll get your thoughts on it after we play it through once here. So, if I can hit the play button, which I can.
If you got a simple completion, throw it. Desmond, you got to look it in. Okay, give him the hitch. If you don't, run 29. It's automatically the hitch.
He sits down. I'm going to let him fade.
You want Caesar?
Yeah, we'll go Caesar.
Hey, it was 29 and Caesar. Get out of the way.
Yeah, no matter what, just block. Right side, 29, Caesar or Yost.
Caesar is up. Hey, Ricky! Ricky! You know it's toss. You know what we're going to do right now? He's going to throw it to Desmond, and Desmond's going to score a touchdown. Jay, should I be kicking a field goal if he drops this ball?
No, they were deciding on throwing it there. I had heard, I don't know, he had the option there.
That kid is unbelievable.
They were going to pitch it to Ricky Powers unless the guy was sitting up on it, and I guess they were, right? So is that what we're talking about?
I think he was maybe reading the alignment of the corner, the secondary, determine whether he was going to throw a hitch or throw it like they did. But yeah, I'm sure Elvis was reading that thing. But yeah, it was just bringing back memories of Coach Mo on the sideline and hearing him in the locker room and. Yeah, I remember the Illinois game. You talked about the Illinois game. That was a big game for Michigan because Coach Mo had gotten fired the year before, and Bo looked at he was upset about that, and he let the players know that listen, Illinois didn't give our Coach Mo enough time. They didn't give him an honest shot, and he was fired up about it. We hung 70 on him that Saturday, and. Yeah, they were in a man coverage that play there, and I've talked about our defensive scheme against Auburn, giving them 3 field goals. I mean, they were scoring 50 points a game with Bo Jackson. Coach Moeller's scheme was unbelievable. I defended option as a high school coach for many years, and I did the same things, and we were always good at defending option. And his, he could defend anything. He could defended the BYU stuff. We gave one of their lowest scoring, and we beat Miami of Florida, one of the highest, scoring defenses around. But and then we went out and stopped the option. So he understood all the different types of schemes that you had to stop. But Danny, for me, and I talked to a couple of my buddies that I played with, and is going on Sunday. You look at the film and you break down the film, and you hear the coach and the defensive coordinator. Is pretty much the major voice, but your position coaches are going to also talk, and communicate with you as a position player. But it was just a master's class every Sunday on football to sit there and listen to Coach Moeller and my great coach, Milan Vuletic, my position coach, and Lloyd Carr coaching the secondary. And it was just a master's class on learning defensive football from listening to those guys every day. And, just how they prepared us mentally and physically. And a real quick story. There used to be a tree, Danny, out in the far end of the Michigan practice field. It was near the railroad tracks. Former players remember that tree, especially if you played defense. So at the end of practice on Mondays and Wednesdays, Coach Mo believed to play defense, you had to be in better shape than the offensive guys. You had to be able to run all day long. And at the end of practice, he would just condition the heck out of us. And if the offense went long, we were going to suffer because you didn't know when Coach Bo was going to finally end practice. Coach Mo tried to time it up, but he used to have us run to that tree and then run back and do down-ups and do push-ups and do squat thrusts and then run back to the tree. And you learn to hate that darn tree. And I was at practice last week for the camp. I noticed they tore that tree down. but that was Coach Moe's favorite tree, and he ran the hell out of us there.
Were you surprised when Bo in '89 decided that he was going to retire, that Gary Moeller took over as the head coach? Did you think that he would be a good head coach?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I knew he would be a good coach. You know, and you know, he had to learn a lot from that Illinois experience, even though it didn't work out. But you know, he obviously learned a lot from that. And if you look at our staff at that time, when Bo did transition, you know, Coach Moe would have, because Coach Hanlon, I don't know that he wanted, you know, he was already getting older. I don't know that he wanted it, because a lot of the guys that have been with him a long time, and Coach Moe was probably the, you know, he was the best candidate. And Coach Schembeckler would have known, he would have known his assistants better than any of us. And he made the right choice, because Coach Moe had 5 great years there, man. You know.
Yeah. Les Miles might disagree. Cam Cameron maybe too, but I think he did make the right choice. I'm just looking over the 5 years. The first game against Notre Dame, I think that was the Stonebreaker game in '90. But in Moeller's first year, he loses to Michigan State by 1. I think that was the Eddie Brown game where he tripped Desmond in the end zone. The next week, lose to Iowa by 1 point. Those are the 3 losses: the Stonebreaker, the Brown. So those are all coming down to one play. In '91, Florida State, that was a big smackdown that the Seminoles gave Michigan. But then they won all their games until the Rose Bowl. But then they avenged the Rose Bowl loss in '92. And then you wonder, if you had the rules of today, you know, '92 Michigan goes 6-0, and they get 3 or 9-0-3, right? So 3 ties there that had a chance maybe to go undefeated, and they come back, and you look at '93 as 8-4, but '94, that was the Cordell Stewart play with Colorado. I mean, there's some great teams in there, just when you look through that, and really close games. I mean, just the one thing about the really close game, 1-score game with Notre Dame, 1-point game against Michigan State, 1-point game against Iowa, and that's just how it went through all those ties in '92.
Yeah, Coach Moe recruited really good players. You know, I think we were part of 3 championships in that era, and he set, you know, there was a lot of talent that he recruited that you know, put Lloyd in a great position to succeed, because we were up and running, man. There was Michigan was a national program, getting players all over the country at that time. And let me also say this about Coach Moe. I don't know if I emphasize it enough, but he had just the right amount of toughness, you know, to get after guys, but just enough love too. I mean, he had a good balance there of you knew he cared about you, but he could get after you and get after you hard when he needed to. So there was, you know, he had a good skill there. And I just, you know, Danny, all of us, we have different coaches, different teachers, different. It could be the band guy for somebody, or being in the drama club, or the quiz bowl, or whatever it is that we're involved with. We have people that influence us. You know, we all do. We all have those people. You know, and for me, Coach Moe is definitely in the top 10 of people that have influenced me, not just as a coach, but just as, you know, trying to do the right thing out there, man. He was just, you know, just doing the right thing kind of guy, man. Never took the easy way, and nothing unethical. Always just, you know, doing the things the right way, and working hard and being smart, but definitely, you know, taught me a ton of football.
It reminds me, in 2004, he was at a Michigan football reunion. I pulled 10 seconds of audio from the speech that he made. Here it is.
The money is one thing. The character and the values of the whole thing, when you get down there and you can't spend the damn money anymore, is the thing that, to me, that you take away from here and being a winner.
There he is. I was Bowler in 2004. Could have been the football ball.
Yeah, we used to have we had some great reunions. We haven't really had them much. I don't know, Coach Harbaugh, and he doesn't, we don't do as much of that stuff, but yeah, Coach Moe was, we just felt, I remember feeling how bad all that played out when he left. But, you know, if Matt Millen would have gave him a shot, Coach Moe would have won. Matt Millen, Coach Mo, I think, would finish with a 9-7 season with the Detroit Lions. I think that's what it was. But that wasn't good enough for old Matt. If he'd have given Coach Mo a year or two, I think he would have done some things for our Lions.
Yeah, Scar, I had three things that I've thought about over the last 24 hours, and one of them is something that you touched on. It just reminded me. And one of them, in 1995 at the Michigan spring game, it was the first role that I ever had covering the Michigan football team. I was a spotter up in the broadcast booth, and Moeller came up during the game and, talked to the crew there for about 15 minutes, but he shook my hand. But I just remember like going out and just bouncing, out to my car after that, because I thought, man, this is football Valhalla. I just shook the head coach his hand at Michigan. I mean, this is awesome. And, Moeller was, had that kind of impact when I grabbed your hand and I was able to take that. And the second thing, you alluded to it a little bit, it was, it can show you, the guy had the greatest job in the world and was really good at it. And one bad night cost him all of that, but he was able to get back up and become a head coach in the National Football League. And, in sports, we do this a lot. It's easy to point to one season and even one game where you say, well, that really turned things for this particular program or franchise. But one play in the course of history, Moeller was involved because he was the head coach on Christmas Eve in 2000. And if the Lions win the game against the Chicago Bears, they're going to go to the playoffs. And the Lions, man, they lost their quarterback. The game was blacked out. You had to listen to it on the radio. No Barry Sanders. Bobby Ross gave himself a bus ticket out of town. So Moeller takes over. And if they win that game, and they were in position, they fumbled late, and a Spartan kicker named Paul Edinger kicked a 54-yarder at the buzzer to end the Lions season. And with that, one of the worst GMs in the history of sports, Chuck Schmidt, ends up getting fired by the worst owner in all of professional sports, William Clay Ford. But then Ford gets Matt Millen and picks him as the GM, and then he moves on from Gary Moeller. So all of those things that happen with one kick. I mean, the Edinger 54. That's kind of routine nowadays, but in around 2000, 54, it's still a long kick. It's not routine. So he made that one. Moeller would have stayed on if they made the playoffs. Easy assumption. They don't hire Matt Millen at that point. So, when you're talking about the worst general manager ever, who knows what would have happened there. But Gary would have had his shot.
Yeah,
at least one more year.
He knew I was in coaching, and I reached out, and he definitely was the kind of guy that if I sent him a little note, he sent me something back. He didn't forget about the guys he coached, and I'm sure there's hundreds, thousands of guys from his Miami guys, his Michigan guys, his Illinois guys, and then Michigan as a head coach, and he was with the Bengals, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys he influenced that feel just like me that. They benefited from him as a coach.
You sent him a note after the 2000 season? That's what you're talking about?
I sent him a couple notes when he was with the Lions, when he was still with with Michigan at times, and just thanking him. It was just a short thanking him, or I was teaching some things that you taught me, and just to let him know he was an influence, and he was the things he taught. I was teaching my guys, so just a positive little notes, and he always got back.
Well, he did have a son who played at Michigan, played with you there. You just talked about that, and came back. His son Andy was a coach for a good piece there at Michigan, line coach. When I remember, pretty good offensive line coach as well, Andy Moeller. So. Yeah, I know the last couple of years, declining health. There was somebody saying last time that Gary Moeller had been out was a Coach Burton died a few years ago, and a lot of people had saw him there probably the last time. And then it was a nursing home for the last couple of years there for Coach Moeller.
Another thing about Coach Mo is when you're a player. You do what you're told. You try to learn. They're teaching you. You're trying to understand the whole scheme. You've got all these adjustments that they put in every week. And we're going to do this against this team. We're going to do that against this team. And and you just execute it. You don't always understand how they decide on this scheme or this adjustment. And then as I got older and I started coaching, and I would even, look at some of the old films, and then I start to really, really appreciate, okay, now I understand why we did this. Now I understand how he taught it like that. And, when you're young and 19, 20-year-old kid, you don't get all of it from a coaching standpoint. But, the older I got, the more I appreciated, guys like Gary Moeller and Coach Schembechler, how smart they were and how they led.
All right, last thing for you, Scar. So you played for Bo and Gary Moeller, and we went over, Moeller being over on the offensive side, defensive side. When you ultimately were a head coach, you hear players and coaches say, well, took a little bit from this coach, took a little bit from that coach. What did you take from Gary Moeller? Did you find yourself, you said you used one of his sayings there, and what did you take from Bo? Were you more defensively like Bo, more offensively like Moeller, some other coaches in there? How were you constructed there as a head coach?
From Schembechler, you see the big picture. You see how he managed assistant coaches, how he motivated the whole team, and then how he motivated individually, and the organization of the leader. So you watch the leader and how he leads. So you learn from Bo in that position. Then you watch, the second in command run the defense, and you see how he then answers to the head coach, how he then manages the assistant coaches, and how he manages the defense, and how he teaches. And, Coach Mo, the things I learned about, is just understanding the big picture of all 11 positions and how it all comes into play. And you got to know how another line that Coach Mo used to use all the time is you got to know where your help is. Talking about defense. Defensively, you've got to know where you're supposed to be and where your teammate is. If I'm in the C gap, then someone else is going to be in the B gap. If I've got contain, I can't be, we can't have two guys on contain. You got to know where your help is. That's another Coach Moeller's quote. But, overall adjustments being, he taught me defense. He taught in my position coach, those guys, when you play college football, especially at Michigan in my era, I'm sorry, but Coach Schembechler isn't spending much time at all with the guys that play defense. You're with your position coach and the coordinator. Coach Bo delegated. Again, that's something I learned from Coach Bo. Delegate. He didn't tell Gary Moeller. He didn't tell my position coach who to start. The position coaches decided who was going to start for their positions. My coach used to tell me that all the time. He said, the old man ain't making the decisions. I am. I mean, that gives power then to the position coach. You can't ask a guy to be responsible, guys, and then the old man's telling you who to play. So, but yeah, Coach Mo was brilliant schematically, brilliant motivating, brilliant with his practice schedule and his structure and how he taught things, and how he gave you that delicate balance of toughness with a little bit of love. And, I could go on and on about him.
Well, you've done a great job, and this is a good transition to get into the recruiting from Friday, because Gary Moeller also, I would say, was a great recruiter. And if you look from 95, we talked about what happened in May. I mentioned the spring game that was in April, but before that, he had a 1995 Michigan football recruiting class. And in that Michigan recruiting class, you had Tom Brady and Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson and Tom Brady, both in that 95. David Bowens also in that 95 recruiting class. So a heck of a class. If you look, two right off the top, two of the greatest football players in the history of the game. And
Michigan was winning, man. We were hot. We were winning Big Ten championships. We went all over the country. I know a guy, the guy that was the position coach that recruited Tom Brady, Billy Harris. He was from the school I coached. He was a good player at Michigan, good coach. But Coach Mo could talk to people, man. You talk about so many skills that the leader has to have. Coach Mo could talk to parents. He could talk to a kid individually. He could talk to the defense as a whole, the whole team. He had great communication skills. He was. I can definitely see where he could recruit anybody, any type of kid. The city kid, the farm country kid. He could recruit him.
It's pretty good at getting him from Ohio as well, which was
important. He's from Ohio, man. So Bo from Ohio, Terrell Burton was from Ohio, Hanlon was from Ohio. So they definitely had their ties into Ohio. We had connections there.
All right. Well, that gets us talking about Coach Moeller being the recruiter. It gets us to what happened on Friday. I don't think it was a surprise to you, Scar, that Dante Moore out of Detroit ended up putting that green hat on, saying that he's going to Oregon. What are your thoughts? You've had a couple of days to think about it. There have been some columns that have been written, a lot of people weighing in on the decision of a high school quarterback not to go to Michigan. What are you thinking about that?
I think that if there was no nil going on, if this was 2 years ago, I think Dante Moore's he's up in Ann Arbor. I don't think there's any question there. I think the NIL was the difference. I put it at 70%, Denny. I think 70% of the reason this kid went 3,000 miles to the Northwest was because of money, NIL money. We heard figures anywhere from 4 million to 10 million. I'm hearing a lot of stuff out there, but the bottom line is, and the kid didn't even talk about money. Okay, so that. It isn't what a smart guy told me a long time ago. It isn't what people say, it's what they don't say when you're talking to them, when you're trying to figure things out. He didn't talk about NIL being a factor. Believe me, that's the number one factor, in my opinion. I put it at 70%. The bottom line was Phil Knight and the payroll and the money. But do I blame the kid? No, I don't blame him. I do not blame a guy for taking advantage financially. To possibly set him up for life. I mean, he could get hurt. His freshman year, he could get hurt. You never know what could happen. So I don't blame him for taking the bag of money, but I put it at 70%. The second reason I think he didn't come to Michigan is J.J. McCarthy. I think J.J. is going to be there a few years, and he's going to have to compete with J.J. McCarthy. He goes to Oregon. They got a transfer in there who will play this year. And after that, this kid can start as a freshman. And they're going to give him he'll probably come in early. They'll give him every chance to play as a freshman. But I don't think he wanted to compete against JJ. Do I blame him for that? No, I don't blame him. If he has a shot to get paid and have less competition, to get on the field earlier, but I think JJ's presence, I put it at 20%. 70% the money, 20% JJ. The other 10%, I put in our offensive scheme. He talked about that. And everything the kid talked, I'm not really listening to much of all what he talked about. He talked about our offensive scheme. Well, we do play with a lot of tight ends. We're not going to throw it as much as USC and Lincoln Riley and some of these guys. That's Jim Harbaugh. That's his offense. That offense we run is the Jim Harbaugh offense. It's not Josh Gaddis's offense. Okay, so then he talks about Josh Gaddis. I think that's irrelevant. I think that's spin. He talked about he wanted to take a shot at Weiss. I think that's BS. If he wanted to go play for Josh Gaddis, go to Miami and play for Josh Gaddis. If you love Josh Gaddis so much. They didn't have the bag down there, or maybe that's just a bunch of BS, Josh Gaddis, and he wanted to take a shot at Weiss. I thought that was terrible, taking a shot subtly, the spin, the bullshit, taking a shot at Weiss. So I put it on, and I don't blame the kid for taking the big bag of money. I don't blame him for dodging competition, but that's where I put it, Denny. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I like that. Do you think that we have seen from Caleb Williams, who went to Oklahoma, ended up at USC, from Bo Nix moving around, a lot of guys that were highly rated quarterbacks that ended up moving about even before NLI? You saw that happen with the top signal callers, whether it was a log jam and figuring out to go somewhere else. Do you think that if things didn't work out in Eugene, that Michigan, with everything that transpired, I mean, there were some things that you mentioned, a lot of it there, but there were some other things that, you hear about as well. Do you think Michigan would entertain the idea of down the road taking Dante Moore as a transfer? Do you think the bridge has been burned?
No, Danny. Our coaches, listen. The guy that recruited me to go to Michigan State, I loved him. I had a great relationship with him. He was hurt. It was a tough thing to say. Michigan isn't burning bridges. These guys are too smart. They know that these kids could come back. That something could change. You had our Besnick on yesterday. He doesn't think. He's not sold that Dante Moore will still end up at Oregon. You never know what can happen. So I think it's just like any walk of life, any type of salespeople. You don't ever want to burn a bridge. He could. You don't know what can happen. But I want to make it clear. I'm not blaming him for the reasons he went there, because I get it. If he can financially put his family up and to be, but he didn't even mention it in his reasonings. But again, it's not what people say, it's what they don't say when you're sizing up, some of the things people say about anything. But I definitely think our coaches are smart enough not to burn bridges when you're recruiting a kid, because he could come back.
There are a lot of Michigan fans that were upset with a national columnist yesterday who wrote a recruiting column. And he had mentioned Dante Moore being offered a scholarship by Jim Harbaugh back when, Dante was in 7th grade, and that his dad had a, Michigan tattoo. And then, the Wolverines lost him. And then he went over everything with CJ Carr, the legacy. And we don't have to revisit the whole thing. But, then his point was like, look, Michigan, had these two QBs, and Jim Harbaugh wasn't able to secure any of them. And, that's a knock on Harbaugh not being able to get one of these guys or both. Do you think that's legitimate criticism, or do you think Michigan fans were like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about? They seem like a lot of people thought it was a hit piece.
Well, Denny, we have been trying to figure out Michigan's plan to compete NIL. And, we've heard the statement, transformative versus transactional. And, do I know this is the ultimate question. Are our coaches, when they go into a family on a family visit, if they got to compete against Oregon, Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State, are our coaches, do they have the same opportunity to compete to get those kids when they go in that living room? Or do other schools have different things they can offer that Michigan doesn't believe they want to go that direction? We can't get a straight answer on that. Okay, so, but yeah, Jim Harbaugh offered him as an 8th grader, not Josh Gaddish. Jim Harbaugh has had a relationship with this guy, for four or 5 years now. So it's, for him to turn that relationship down with Michigan down the street, you just have to draw one conclusion. And I don't know that, you can't blame a guy for not signing a kid if you don't have the ammunition when you go in that living room to compete to get a recruit.
Yeah, recruiting is a tough business. And, it's always drama filled, has a lot of twists and turns, and you didn't know 2 years ago, like you were mentioning, that there was name, image, and likeness. But there's a few things, but it doesn't matter to fan bases. It doesn't matter to a lot of people that cover the teams. You can't complain about injuries. You can't complain about the officials. A lot of times you feel like you can, and you really can't complain about teams cheating or doing things, because that's been going on for as long as we've been watching the game. But it's always front and center as we talk about it. OM sending some feedback in. He says, if Oregon loses to Georgia, Utah, and maybe one more team, Dante will decommit. Also, Michigan could have an 11-plus season to get him. Michigan having success on the field, that's going to help. I'm with him there. I don't know if a 3-loss Oregon team out in the now Pac-10 is going to affect him if he's got a contract in front of him that he signed that he's going to get, $3.5, $4.5 million and a half dozen jobs for his family. I think that that part's not going to matter.
Yeah, I just think this kid going to Oregon, it tells you that all the wins, the Big Ten championship, down the street, the great education, the great facilities. We want to keep talking about facilities. All that stuff takes a back seat if this guy's got a big bag of money.
Travis on the feedback. Scar says, Dante who? We have JJ for 2 to 3 more years. That's probably why we weren't attractive for 23.
I agree with it. That's what I just said. I said, listen, the upside of having great players is, you got great players. The downside is, there's some guys that they don't want to compete with that. If they got an opportunity to go someone else, and you have an earlier chance to play. Listen, I know it. When I was getting recruited, I was studying the roster. I looked at who they recruited at my position, and my coach helped me look at some of those things. And I remember asking Coach Schembechler. he got a little irritated. What are you worried about these guys? You can play here. That's why we're recruiting you. But it's. I think JJ's presence and you can't. That's a good problem. It's a good problem if Michigan has great players there. And we're in good shape with quarterback, but we're going to find another good one. We will get another really good quarterback.
Let me ask you. You can always get your feedback up. We'll get it up there. Scar will answer your question. You mentioned John Besnick, who was on yesterday, and he was pretty adamant that giving high school players large amounts of money, whether it's to commit or whether they're here, is going to ruin team unity. The team concept. You're going to have a senior guy looking out at a freshman coming in. I'm not exactly saying it how he did, but there's no doubt that was his point. Yesterday, I was looking at some things, and I don't know if the numbers were all 100% confirmed or right, but they were saying that J.J. McCarthy has north of $2 million secured now for name, image, and likeness at Michigan. So Scar, he hasn't started a game yet. He's got Cade McNamara right there, who in that same story did not have as much name, image, and likeness, and he's the Big Ten defending champion quarterback. And so you've got these dynamics here with this money. Do you think, how's Jim Harbaugh handle that? Do you think that this can affect the team concept with this money that different players are going to have and the players are going to know about it?
Football players learn at an early age that the quarterback, the running back, the guys that score touchdowns, those are the guys that get their name in the paper. I dealt with it as a high school coach. I report my score to the local newspaper, and he just wants to know about those guys. I said, well, they weren't worth a darn. My defense was better. Our linebacker had a great play. We ran behind this offensive. They don't want to talk about the offensive tackle. So I think everybody that plays football understands there's certain guys that get more media attention. But, Flame, the Flame, I totally agree with him about that locker room chemistry and keeping your locker room happy. And I get that part of it. But I also want to make sure our coaches have a chance to recruit. And that's the thing. You got to find a way. The guy that can find a way to keep, 100 some guys in that locker room, all sharing, what do they say, Denny? We're all going to eat, right? I want that would be the formula I would look for. How can I keep my backup guard happy? My second string defensive lineman. How can he benefit? I don't want to keep hearing about one guy making a bunch of money. That doesn't do anything for my locker room. I want to have something for a little bit for something. That's what I would be fighting for if I'm coaching this thing. Obviously, there are some guys that are more marketable. Some of these businesses, they want the good-looking quarterback out there. They want that kid, to market their stuff. I get that. But at the same time, I would be battling to get something for all my guys, all 100 of them.
You mentioned a nickname, Flame. That's not Jim Harbaugh's nickname. Is that John Urbesnick's nickname?
Oh, that's what he used to go by. Back in the day before he had that white hair, he had reddish hair.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. There you go.
Let me just say this. Okay. Great player. I remember going to the Michigan camp as a young junior. And I remember watching Jarnar Besnick walking around there. He looked like the Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he was a built guy, and he was a great player. And I shook his hand a few times. Go Blue.
Well, speaking of Schwarzenegger, I've had a few people tell me when I've mentioned that I'm working with you, they always say, how come Scar's not cutting his sleeves off and showing his arms more? I don't know. You think I should ask him that? But there's been more than one person that, has said that. So I believe that, that they always want to see the gun show. Here's a few more feedbacks for you, Scar, if you got the time. We'll get a couple in here. OM says JJ getting $2 million makes me think he will be the starter. Jim Harbaugh is still coaching for his job.
I don't know. That money is about, these people that throw it out there at these guys. They're probably using them to market their product. And they feel that maybe JJ is going to help them sell whatever it is they're selling. So that's how those decisions are made. I think that's irrelevant how much money a kid's making in terms of the decision Harbaugh is going to make. Yeah. I know it would be with me because that bankroll is coming from people that want to use these guys to sell their products.
Well, McCarthy's throwing the ball now, but he wasn't able to do much throwing in spring and really compete with whatever skeleton drills or anything. So, however you're looking at the quarterback battle, there will be one in fall camp that's going to start in a couple weeks. But I look at it, if I'm handicapping it right now, I think that there's probably more than a 60% chance that Cade McNamara is going to be the starter against Colorado State on September the 3rd. I think that when you start talking about the Iowa game, though, it's about even money on who would be the starter for Michigan. And if I had to guess who was going to be the starter next year for Michigan today, I would put it at 60-40 to McCarthy, but there's not a lot. I mean, that's pretty close. All of those numbers are pretty close. I mean, I know people are fascinated with the McCarthy's wheels and his arm strength. I mean, there's a perceived higher ceiling there, but you've said it a million times. You've got to be able to do a lot of other things. You can throw it. You can hit a driver 400 yards down the fairway, or you can hit a driver 400 yards, but you got to keep it in the fairway. And then there's also a lot of other things that are involved in the game, chipping, putting, and McNamara, getting the guys in and out of the huddle and all the different things. There's more that goes into it, but I am myself fascinated with the arm strength and the wheels of McCarthy, but that's my breakdown of it.
Yeah, for me as a coach, and I know our coaches thought the same way, there's nothing like game reps, game performance, proving yourself in game environments, and we've got a big sample of McNamara, huge sample of his productivity in big games. So, we would be, it would be very difficult for me if I'm trying to pick between those two guys to get him out of that position because of what he's proven under pressure in front of 100,000 people, in front of national crowds. JJ has done some good things. He has a good little sampling, and he does have the run threat. So, but it's going to be real tough for JJ to overtake in the coaches' minds the fact that this kid has done so much for us on film in big games.
Yeah, and maybe both of these guys will end up playing in the NFL, McNamara and McCarthy. And you remember when Jim Harbaugh was coming in, everybody thought that you couldn't have a coach for quarterbacks, a guy who played in college, played in the NFL, and had Andrew Luck, and then what he did with Kaepernick. I mean, his quarterback resume was flush coming into Michigan, but so it's odd. It's not odd. I mean, this is the way it's gone here. But so this is Yakov saying the quarterbacks that have played for Harbaugh at U of M haven't played a down of NFL football. Let's not pretend that could be a reason as well. I guess he's talking about Dante Moore. But you could be right about that. I mean, that's going to be used. But the guys that he has, I would bet that one of these two would be taking some snaps in the NFL.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think that both these kids are I mean, McNamara is that's a Bill Belichick, that's a Tom Brady type kid right there, man. Accurate, gets you in the right play, and hey, recruiting quarterbacks is he hit the jackpot with Andrew Luck, and and ever since then it's he hasn't had as much success until McNamara. So I think we've if there was an exact science to quarterback, it would be easy to predict, but. I like the direction we're going. He's got 2 good ones now. Let's keep it going. Cade will start this season, according to Jesse. I agree with you, Jesse.
There's your question.
Who would Moeller start? Coach Mo would probably think along the same lines I'm talking about with who's done things, who's productive. But at the same time, Coach Mo understood the difficulties of defending a quarterback that can run. We talked about it. I know when I played outside linebacker on Monday, the first thing I looked at was the first question I had to find out was how fast is the quarterback? How fast is the quarterback? It changes everything for the guys that have to rush the quarterback. You got to know the limitations of the quarterback from a speed standpoint.
Good stuff. OM saying Corum and Edwards equal Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, the Georgia Bulldogs running backs from the past couple of years. Either Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards could be as good as any running backs in the country or any running backs that have been around. I like both of them. I mean, this is getting back to the current team. And sometimes you do this in the off season, but what's not to like about either of those guys? We haven't seen Donovan Edwards. He's proven himself if he has, I would say, elite talent. It has been pass catching, so we haven't seen him really running the ball between the tackles. And Corum, he had a few drops, and he did get hurt, but he looks like a great back to me. I think both of them could be great backs. I mean, I don't have any knocks on them. Is it between the tackles that you might think can – because Hassan Haskins was so good in short yardage situations, they went to Hassan Haskins every time. That's going to be the one thing. Can these guys prove that they can plow ahead, Scar? What do you think of
Blake Corum, in my opinion, does everything well. Everything. The kid secures the ball. He makes people miss. He's got speed. He pass protects. He is a tough pass protector. He's good. He catches the ball. He's he does everything. Donovan Edwards is the breaker. He's the guy that can go the distance. I think maybe a little more than Corum. But the only thing I have not seen proven to me with Donovan Edwards is the pass protection ability and how good a job is he going to do protecting the quarterback. That Michael Hart will get him situated. Michael Hart will teach him that. He didn't show it to me as a freshman, but that takes time. He's got to he'll get better with that. And what we see this year coming in, Michael Hart will have him ready, and he will be a complete back in all areas. He's got to secure the ball. I don't like some of that stuff where he pumps his arm like that when he gets in the open, because he had a fumble. He had a fumble on our sideline in one game, and I gotta see that he can secure that darn football and he can pass protect. That's what I'm looking for from Edwards.
Good stuff, Scar. We'll wrap it up looking back at Gary Moeller. If there's one game maybe Michigan could dedicate to the former Michigan head coach, I'm going to go to November 19th. It is Michigan's last home game of the year. They're playing Illinois. How about winning that one for Coach Moeller?
Yeah, Coach. That'd be a nice one for Coach. I know that game 1981. I know it was very emotional for Coach, and Coach Schembechler put a lot of emphasis on it. We won it. We hung 70 on him, and I love you, Coach Mo. A lot of your former players, they love you, and for everything you did for us is developing us as men, not just players.
Great job, and Michigan will do a great job in the opener with a tribute for Gary Moeller, I'm sure.
Go Blue.
There he is, Jim Scarcelli. Thanks for watching. Thanks for